Hello everyone, thanks for joining us. This is World Now. I am Precious Amayu. We start off in the Middle East, where Iran is preparing to lay its late Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to rest, and that's after days of nationwide mourning. The funeral procession has reached the holy city of Mashhad, where thousands continue to gather ahead of the burial. The ceremonies come as tensions with the United States are once again rising and threatening the fragile ceasefire brokered just weeks ago.
Thousands of mourners have lined the streets of Mashhad as the funeral procession of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei makes its way through Iran's second largest city. The late Supreme Leader's body has been taken to the shrine of Imam Reza, where he is expected to be buried later today, following prayers and final funeral rites. The procession marks the culmination of several days of national mourning that have drawn large crowds across Tehran, Qom, and other cities. State television has shown mourners waving Iranian flags, carrying portraits of Khamenei, and chanting slogans in support of the Islamic Republic. Iranian officials say the ceremonies are intended to honor a leader they describe as a symbol of resistance and national unity. The funeral has also become a powerful show of solidarity as the country's leadership seeks to project stability following the assassination that triggered a regional crisis. But even as Iran prepares for Khamenei's burial, concerns are mounting over the future of the ceasefire with the United States. Both Washington and Tehran have accused each other of violating the truce, following fresh military operations and retaliatory actions in recent days. The renewed exchanges have raised fears that the pause in fighting could collapse, despite ongoing diplomatic efforts to prevent a wider regional conflict. International leaders continue to urge restraint, warning that any further escalation could threaten security across the Middle East and disrupt global energy supplies. As Iran prepares to bury its supreme leader, attention is increasingly shifting from mourning to the uncertain future of the ceasefire. Diplomats are watching closely to see whether the region moves back towards negotiations or return to open conflict. Baraka Agberemi, TVC News.
We're joined by journalists with Press TV, joining us from Beirut, Lebanon, Mariam Saleh. She is been monitoring the situation in Iran and will give us more details. Good to have you join us, Mariam.
Thank you for having me.
I wish we were talking on the better circumstances, as we see just a mixed emotion going on there in Iran and Iraq as well, part of Iraq. But just to get your thought on the number of people that we've seen on the street, it's been millions of people. How significant is that? And what message has Iran sent to the world?
Well, it definitely sends an array of messages, several messages, political messages, and even religious messages to the region and the world. And of course, we're looking at collective mourning and collective grievances that, like you said, does not only limited to Iran itself. We also saw the same coffins of the martyrs being taken to the holy shrines in Iraq. And the millions that took part, I mean, we're talking about at least 7 million, based on some reports inside Iraq and Karbala and Najaf alone. But you also have symbolic funerals that were held in several towns and several capitals, especially in Lebanon, for example, in Beirut and 2 other cities like Tyre and Baalbek, where we had also these symbolic funerals for many people. We're talking about tens of thousands, at least, that took part. And so this also is, on one side, if it's double faceted, on one side, it is considered part of the religious expression, the ideological ties that link those people, whether in Iraq, Lebanon, Iran, and other areas, based on the stressing that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is the leader of these people when it comes to religious terms, and also even on political status concerning the wider confrontation with the United States and Israel, because these people believe that it was only Iran that stood by the side of them while they were fighting the Israeli aggression in Lebanon and also in Iraq. They believe that with their stance against the Takfiri terrorists, Daesh, ISIS, and so on, in that fight, that it was Iran that backed them up, and in addition to, of course, the stances coming from Palestine and other Arab countries, they believe that it was Iran that stood with them, and they therefore believe that the leader of Iran is their leader as well, or is in some way linked to them. But you have also the political stances. Many of those who have said that Iran was weakening, Iran does not have, or the Islamic Republic of Iran as a government no longer has support of its people. We see now that this has been proven the total opposite. We even heard from the US president himself, Donald Trump, say that he was surprised to see people crying for the loss that they have of the loss of Sayyid Ali Khamenei, and he was under the impression that people did not love him. And so I think that this even is something that is educational for the US leaders, for leaders in the world.
And Mariam,
something.
Just apologies for butting, because you make a very important point. Because when you look at the media, maybe in the West mostly, I mean, the Ayatollah is painted as someone who, Iranians don't even want, and that the Iranians want a regime change. And then you really see the raw emotions coming from the footages we've been seeing in Iran, and just from everyone, women, men, children. I mean, does that sort of tell you, when for that procession on the street we're seeing, that he's now viewed just in terms of how he died? I mean, that Israeli strike on February 28th, that has crowned his legacy in the eyes of Iran's rulers and his supporters, and he's now considered a martyr.
Absolutely. It has definitely backfired. The plan from the Israelis, especially, that had dragged the United States into this war to try to weaken the Islamic Republic of Iran, saying that the killing of the leadership will also lead to some sort of an uprise. Those who are against the government will perhaps rise and topple the government, and so on. And so these have proven to be wrong. And we can see that if you study the ideology, the Shiite ideology, this is seen as an extension of Ashura, that martyrdom itself does not weaken it. On the opposite, it actually strengthens. And when we look at this collective mourning, which is very similar to Ashura, actually, the remembrance of Karbala and Imam Hussein and so on, this also proves that they believe this is an extension of it, that he is also considered to have a lineage and a great grandson of Imam Hussein and Prophet Muhammad, that also has great significance among the people, and that will also prove that the people here are ready to fight. And we've seen this through the war, especially against Iran. The more there is foreign aggression, and this has been proven in the last 100 years at least, that as long as there is foreign aggression against the country, this leads to more unity among the people. It leads to more support for the government and the armed forces, whether it is the IRGC or the army, and they definitely in sync when it comes to the latest war. We saw how they were able to stop and deter the Israelis and the Americans from actually achieving their goals. And now we see that the U.S. is still going back to the issue of negotiations. And so no matter how much they use military force, it seems to definitely backfire. Now we're looking at, perhaps we did see a whole line of leaders being killed. The Israelis continuously also threaten. The U.S. has also, based on some reports, even at some point during the negotiations in Islamabad, gave caution to the leaders of Pakistan in order to tell the Iranians to be careful, because the Israelis always want to try to kill everyone. And it is, whether it is the negotiator, whether it is the time of negotiations or dialogue, perhaps even mediators will be killed by the Israelis in order to sabotage any sort of deal that would lead to peace and no aggression. And we saw that from the beginning of the MOU, since it was declared, the Israelis were always talking about the fact that this is bad for Israel and that they would do anything to jeopardize these talks. And they have always said that we have
because
objectives,
of time,
targets.
Apologies, I keep butting. I really don't want to do that, but I have very limited time. And I want to throw in as much questions as I can, because I want to sort of balance that, want us to sort of balance that legacy of the Ayatollah, who is now being seen as a martyr because of how he died. And then, his supporters love him because he stood up to the West. But underneath that also run deep veins of discontent that have grown over decades. We saw the protest in January. There were people who died. It's been seen as bloody repression. There has been international sanctions and economic mismanagement, as some people during those protests, some of those Iranians said. So how do you manage that sort of legacy, balance that sort of legacy that he's both loved, and yet people also talk about repression under his regime?
Well, actually, we did see the fact that the Iranians have declared that they have conducted investigations, and all the talk about the number, the so-called 40,000 that were killed, all that is definitely inaccurate. And we've seen through Israeli reports, they said our Mossad agents were on the streets, our Mossad agents were armed, they were ready. And now even we hear statements and documents coming out from the Israeli regime also talking about the fact that they also have new plots and plans and armed and funding for all those groups that are Mossad agents actually within the Islamic Republic of Iran that could at any point be actually demanded to come out and start shooting people in the streets based on or under the pretext of saying that there are protests. We know that there are protests. The President Pezeshkian has spoken about these. He spoke about the fact that there needs to be more solidarity and consolidation of efforts when it comes to the social support for the people of Iran. But you also have a lot of aid that is given, whether it is through food aid or petrol, for example, or gas, the assistance that is given by the government that is constantly also in a state where you have 90 million people under sanctions and under constant threat from the US and Israel and this blockade that was enforced. And despite all that, you still see a lot of assistance being given to the people. And it has been proven, whether from the protests of the hijab and then later on the protests where a lot of people were killed in the streets, it has been proven that there were always foreign interference that took place in those protests. Had it been only Iranian, then there would have been some sort of consolidation of efforts, I believe, and understanding and discussions within the Islamic Republic of Iran in order to reach a solution and not the killing and the type of deaths that we saw on the streets in the last protests.
Mariam, I wish we could talk long. I mean, he spent decades building a leadership architecture in Iran, and now that he's gone, we want to see how that plays out as well. But that's the much time we have for the conversation. Always a pleasure to have you on, Mariam. Mariam Saleh, journalist.
Thank you.